Okay, before I show you how I make gaiters, let's have a little talk first of all about what gaiters are. Gaiter, of course, is a Japanese word which means they're kind of sandals, particular to Japan, or often they're referred to as clogs because they're made of wood. These are blanks from the original Japanese version. The male one is usually wider, the female foot is a bit narrower. These are the typical Japanese sizes. So here in Thailand I make the female one a little bit wider, the feet are a little bit wider probably from the way they're used. So you can see a traditional gaiter is not just wooden, like a wooden version of a flip-flop, but it has these two wooden blocks underneath, which they call ha, meaning teeth. So the ordinary ones have two teeth. There are versions with three or even a single tooth, but for now we'll just concentrate on the ordinary one. They've been used in Japan for many hundreds of years as the basic form of footwear. And they're still used today, but not very much by the ordinary people, mainly when they have a festival and they're dressed up in their kimono, or sometimes kids wear them for fun. They like to click-clack around on them, and students sometimes like to show their Japaneseness by using their traditional kinds of footwear. This design is probably particular to Japan. There are wooden shoes used in various countries around the world, but not usually of this kind of design. So you'll notice the teeth are not equidistant from each end. They're towards the back. That's of course because the foot is not, the leg doesn't come into the middle of the foot, it comes in the back. So the weight is more on, when we're standing up straight, the weight is on the back. And actually, when they're wearing them, the correct size, if you're measuring for somebody, they should be fitting comfortably, not tight at the front. And the actual heel will hang over the edge of the end of the gaiter by 1 or 2 centimeters. And that is actually a correct correct fit. It looks as though it's not correct, as though it should be within the bounds of the wood, but no, because the way we stand, our weight coming down the leg and to the heel is actually on this rear tooth. And so when we're walking, we're not walking flat-footed and just going like this. We're actually walking normally, and we go and tip to the front, so you get kick-clack, kick-clack, kick-clack. This will of course, from regular use, cause the front to get worn down before the actual teeth get worn away. This is an old Japanese pair, the first pair I was given by a friend from Japan, and they've had a lot of hard use. As you can see, I've replaced the strap on one occasion, and the teeth have been worn down, so I've put extra blocks on them. This was before I built my workshop and started making my own, so this was a bit of a rough job, just gluing bits of wood onto the bottom. But they served the purpose. As you can see, it's been very worn away at the front. Now, ones I use regularly, I'll put a small piece of wood underneath the fresh front, and so it would hit on that and start to wear that before it wears the actual. Because they're getting worn away quite sharply, they will eventually start to crack and flake off as well. So this pair I don't really use anymore. I have many more which I can make myself. The straps can be narrow or wide, very fat and soft, and they're usually some form of cloth, and they have a piece of twine running through them, which is then tied together underneath to keep them in place. There is a proper knot which the Japanese use. I haven't managed to learn it yet, but I use there's various techniques to join the front, and I'll show you some later on. So the first thing we need to do when we're going to make, another point you might notice is that the hole for the front is in the middle. It's not right, or there's no right or left for gaiter, so you can wear them on either foot. And if you walk with a gait which causes the teeth to wear down on one side, as you see, ordinary shoes often get worn down more on one side than the other, depends how people walk, then you can always swap them over, and that will even it up. But they have a hole in the middle. Some people tried actually to make the hole to one side to give them a left and right, and when we stand normally our feet are like this at a V angle, and so when we're walking, if you actually make the left and right where the hole comes in, it causes the back end to knock together, which is not very good. So there is a point to this. It looks awkward, but it's not. They're fine to wear like that. The wood they use to make these traditionally is called Paulownia wood, which is a very light wood. There's various varieties of it, very fine grained, so you don't get wooden sharp splinters coming off and hurting the feet. It does wear away if you use it regularly, but it's also fairly a soft wood, so it's never hard and uncomfortable. It does sort of mould itself to your feet a bit after a long time. You can see even depressions where the toes have been for a long time, and you'll get the marks, sweat marks from the feet. But the Paulownia wood is a very fast growing wood as well, and another benefit of course for wearing them in hot countries like this in Southeast Asia is that the wood has a pleasant smell, but it has some properties which insects don't like, so you don't get many problems of termites or white ants and that eating wood. All the normal wood in places like Thailand here, the house wood and bamboo, they get eaten away quite quickly by insects, but this wood seems to have some self-protection against them, and the insects don't like it, which is another advantage. If you're not using them regularly, store them away in a cupboard, you're not going to put it open and find them full of holes. So when we're going to make ourselves a pair, we have to measure the length of our foot to get the correct size. The width isn't quite so important. As I say, the male ones are rather wide, but the length is the important thing. And so suppose your foot is length, this is 9.5 inches long, this is a normal male size, so that's about 24.5 centimeters. So if your foot was just about that length or slightly less, 23 centimeters, 9 inches, it's still a fine foot, because it's fine fit, because as I say, your foot will overhang, the heel will overhang slightly. Another advantage of these, if you're in a hot country where you regularly wear flip-flops, the kind of lightweight sandals which the floor of the sandal is actually on the ground. So when it's raining and there's puddles of water or even mud on the ground, walking normally you get the slap, slap, slap as the thing slaps up as you walk. And because the ground is touching, this flips up dirty water from the back, up the back of your trousers or whatever. But because gaiter a little bit heavier, and the part touching the ground is just these here, so you don't get the dirty water thrown up the back of your legs, which is yet another advantage. So they're natural products, so unlike rubber or plastic, they're biodegradable. They're fairly easy to repair if they do get worn down. If you look after the front so it doesn't wear too much, the actual teeth can be, find almost any block of wood you can put on them to repair them with. You'll see that the traditional Japanese ones are made from a single block of wood. So these are actually carved out, and the grain runs along here. So actually these wear away quite quickly. Now the ones I make uses a block, and I have it with the grain, the ends of the grain down to the ground, and that makes it a lot stronger. It takes a lot longer to wear away with the ends of the grain hitting the ground, and it's easier to make with a separate top and the separate blocks. I know the traditional one is one piece, but there must be a lot of wastage of wood in making these, and because it is a very lightweight wood and can break off, especially because the grain is running along here, they often strengthen them by putting in a dowel, drilling them and making a dowel in that rear tooth to add strength and stop them snapping off so easily. But of course, if you're making them with the separate block, you've got the grain of the wood running down, and that gives extra strength too. You've got to find a decent glue to use to attach them. I first of all started off using 2-part epoxy, which you've got to mix in equal amounts, and that's strong enough, but it's awkward to use. So now I have the more usual carpenter's glue. This one's Gorilla Glue, or TLA adhesive latex. They're PVA glues, polyvinyl acrylic glues, and the wood itself, the glue is actually stronger than the wood. So if anything's going to give way, it's going to be the wood bond to the glue, not the glue itself. So they provide quite a good method of attaching the blocks to the flat. So I use, because I make quite a lot of these to sell, I made up a little template which I just drew around from this Japanese one, and marked the places for the holes and the front slot. But if you're only making a single pair, you don't need that. As for the wood itself, I have the Polonia wood here. This is quite a thin board, which was cut from a thicker one at the lumber yard I got the lumber from. This is an ordinary 1-inch block of wood. This has been planed on both sides. You can use this. It's quite a bit thicker than the traditional one, but you could also cut it down. This is a little bit thinner than the original, but it will work. Of course, the thinner one will be lighter in weight. The thicker one will be a bit heavier, but certainly stronger. I have another one which is more like 1.5 inches. You can use this for certain other types which require a thicker platform, but I tend to use it to make the blocks. So this size is nice for making the blocks from. And then we cut it, we have to cut it across the grain here, measure the size so that you've got nice square blocks the same width as the same length as the width, and cut them across, and then you'll cut them to size later. If you make the mistake of going down this way, then they will be lying along the way and the grain will be in the wrong direction, so when you put them on, the grain will be more like the traditional, but it won't be so strong. So I've chosen my wooden board here. Paulownia does have quite a lot of knot holes, but I'll make two pieces from this side. That's quite a nice grain pattern. First of all, I'll plane the edge to give me an edge to work from. Now I can mark up on here around the template I've made. I can trim off the size, correct width, use the template, make sure the fence is the right distance away. Take off the fence and use freehand to just part off making gaiters not like furniture, they don't have to be exact sizes. Obviously much nicer if they are a perfect match. And, so that's the two pieces I'm going to use. Nice grain through them. So with the pieces cut off, now I'll just use my template to mark with a brad, make a mark where the holes are going to be. We drill the holes before we attach the wooden blocks. And the template will go away. Right, to make the holes I'm going to use a hand drill, the ordinary wooden kind of bit, and so for the big holes I used a 1/2 inch bit, the smaller one an ordinary . This is an ordinary wooden bit there with a little point on the end. So now I've drilled the holes, I'm going to do a bit of sanding to make them all square. So I use a drill in that front hole to hold them in the same position together. So I'm going to make the wooden blocks now from this 1.5 inch wood. I've set my table saw fence using the upper piece to get it just a little bit wider, and this piece will be just about almost exactly in half. I'll get my best planed edge against it. Don't forget my safety goggles. Almost exactly half. Now I can little saw sled to part them off to the correct thickness. So a block of wood here and use it to judge the correct okay. So after all that, I've got a nice collection of wooden blocks, square wooden blocks, just right to start putting on the gaiter. There's a wonderful smell to this wood when it's freshly cut as well, the sawdust, and when you're sanding too. If you don't have any wood thick enough to make these blocks, you can do what I've done before and glue two thinner pieces of wood together, and that works fine since the glue's quite strong. These are a little bit narrower for the women's size of gaiter. Oh, we're just about ready to start gluing on these blocks now. Make sure that they're fitting nice and flat, not rocking about, because one or the other is not quite mating together. So, yeah, glue. And squeeze out and put it right up next to the holes there. use the original to make sure we get the other leg in the right place. Right. Clamps on those together. Turn one over, put the other on top, and okay. Leave that for a while to set. Okay, now the glue's dried. I've taken off the clamps and we need to do a bit of sanding to clean up these edges of the blocks, level with the top, and to give the top a nice smooth sanding and round off the edges. Okay, you can see the strip of cloth here. I'm prepared for sewing up to make the straps. This one's about 5-6 centimeters wide. You can also make them thicker, have them up to about 9 or 10 even, for very fat straps. So I just fold it over. Rub it against the edge here to crease it a little bit. Okay. I like to use the type of stitch which is straight but goes back and forth on itself, so it makes a stronger stitch. The ordinary simple stitch is not really strong enough, and zigzags are a bit awkward, makes the stitching too wide. This is going to be longer than you need, so you can get the main part stitched the right width apart, avoiding any roughness in the cut edge, and you'll cut it to the correct length later on. So we've got a nicely stitched tube here. Now what we've got to do is turn it back inside out. It's easier if we do this when it's shorter, so we'll cut it to the right length first. Right, once we have our cloth sewn up into a tube, everything's a lot easier when it's a wider fat piece of cloth for a fatter strap, to turn it inside out and to fill it. Everything's a lot easier when it's a wider one instead of a narrow one. So this one started off as about 8 or 9 centimeters wide before it was sewn together. So I push it down a tube. I have several tubes, plastic and aluminium, different sizes. Push it down the centre of the tube, and then I turn it over one end. Around the outside. Fold it over the outside of the tube. Now we can just push it like this, and it turns it inside out. So where we've got a piece ready to be filled, I've already measured the length of this to be correct for the size of gaiter from the measure from the holes around the front and leave plenty so that it's not too tight. So I get my cord here, which is just ordinary string, natural string, and I take a length just about arms outstretched in length, so it's over 1 meter long. Get 2 pieces the same length, because I'll be making a pair. Right, so that's one. And I use this padding material I got from the cloth shop. It's sort of nylon like fibre. This is a thin sheet, not the big fat things they used to fill pillows with. Probably similar kind of material. So I measure the strip, and that's the right length. So I'll cut a wide-ish piece here. Because I've got quite a wide strap. Narrower strap would be smaller. Then I'll cut it in 2 for each of the 2 separate straps. So, with one of my strings, I'll start it down the tube, and roll it over the string and start pushing it down in the tube. Carry this on all the way, and the whole thing's in the tube. Other people use other systems to make these, but I do it this way. It's the way I devised that seems to work. Of course, the propagator shops in Japan nowadays, very few of them actually make any gaiter. They merely assemble them. They probably get the wooden blanks from a factory in bulk, and the straps, which they call hanae, they probably buy those from another supplier in different colours and sizes. So really the ordinary gaiter shops, they just, the customer comes, chooses the wooden base of the right size and design they want, and because some of them are actually coloured with lacquer, not just the plain wood. The majority are just the plain wood, because some of the wood has very nice grain patterns, and they choose the hanae, the colour, the style they want, and so the shopkeeper then just puts them together. So we've got that just poking out the end, and put the strap, put the cloth on the tube. Okay, I take that to the end there. Just grab that and pull it out, and they'll come out together. Oh, nicely assembled. Disappeared a bit into one end. And make sure it's level with the end, and the other one can go in a little bit. If it's a bit too long, we can just cut off the white padding before we assemble it to the gaiter. And this is just one of the pair, and just make sure the string is equal lengths, and that's one done. Okay, now we've got our wooden blank ready. We've used some smooth sandpaper to give it a nice smooth finish. You can use a rotary sander or do it by hand with a sanding block. Once we're happy with that, there's nothing much really to be done with the wood anymore. So we get our strap ready. Hanae. This is how I check the length. When I cut the tubing to the correct length, I have it going around the front hole, and at least long enough to go down the back holes. So we've now got to prepare this. We've got the string on each end to the same length, and so make sure the stuffing is inside, and then use a long sharp needle to make a hole right through. It doesn't have to go through the string itself. And I take the end, pass it through the eye of the needle, and pull it out. Sometimes very tough. I use a pair of parallel pliers to help me pull it through. Okay. Right. So that I pull not quite and come back through here, and I can pull that tight. This one I also don't pull right through. I come back to the end again, leaving a loop, and pull that tight again. Do the same on the other end. Okay, back through here again, and tighten it, through here again, tighten it. I've got a little loop. Right, now we're ready to start tying it on. So put the straight bit through first, followed by the loop. Try and squeeze them together and pull on the loop and the straight string so as it comes through. Nicely. Now I can see where the seam is and put that to the inside. Do the other side. Don't need to pull that loop tight yet. Do the other side. straight one through. This loop's a bit long, and then the loop goes through. Pull that together. Okay, pull that through again. About the same length as the other. Now, find that seam again. Make sure it's equal. Come into the same place, and we can measure and see how far we come towards that front hole. We don't want it to be too tight, not too loose. So these are just about okay. Now I'll put this one through that loop and that one through this loop, and tighten them both down on each other. And the loops have tightened up against each other. I can bring this string through to lighten that loop down, lock it in. The same on this one. Bring it through and lock it back against that. That should keep them pretty well in place, you can see. Now, I use a little plastic needle here, and I push through and bring this string around the back, around again, and then come up through and pull tight. So I'm tightening it up towards the base of it there. You can do that a couple or 3 times. Just come out. And then the same for the other side. This is a method I devised myself to lock them. The Japanese actually use a different knot. I tried to find out on the internet how to do it, but I couldn't. And again, locking around there, nice and tight. One more time. That tightens up nicely, and we can finish off with a little reef knot doubled. So instead of just going over once, you go over twice and pull it together. That locks together nicely, and you can see that there how it is locked. I'll just trim off the long ends, and that's it. I can now this just to get the full length up. There it's nicely locked in place, and a nice length coming over here, and do the other one, but then we'll start on attaching the front hole. Right, there are several different ways you can attach to this front hole the loop which will go between your big toe and the next toe. Okay, one method you could use is to use a thickish piece of plastic tubing which will fit in that hole. I'm just level at the bottom there, and attach this with string. Just the same simple string, and we can attach with a double loop like this and come down through the hole and then tie it off underneath. That's one method you could use. Instead of using the string, you can use electrical wire, which does have some advantages. It's slippery, so it goes through the holes and things easier, and it still ties up and locks quite well. Another way is to use the same material but sewn into a much smaller tube. In that case we would use our little plastic needle again to attach the string through the middle of it. And then we get into the middle and we're ready to go. So we then put that over the thing here. Put these two ends through the hole. And through. Then we'd have to squeeze these together and thread them through the hole as well. Get them through, but we don't want to make the string too tight, so we haven't got enough room for to go between the toes. You have to experiment with the length of this, what's comfortable for yourself, and depends on the size, the thickness of the strap here. This would do okay right down to the bottom there. It would still be comfortable enough to work. So, for attaching the bottom, a simple knot will work, but with constant use and pressure, if it's basic string like this, it eventually gets squeezed and slowly pulled into the hole, which makes the strap then rather loose at the front. You can use a little D-ring like this of metal, which helps prevent the knot pulling in, but they're quite expensive, so what I prefer to do is make my own with just a smaller piece of tubing than the other one, a thinner piece, and a small tie lock, and pull that, make it into a little hoop, cut off the end, and that's even thicker than the D-ring and doesn't really get pulled. So I would put that on one leg, and then another piece of string, and tie a simple overhand knot to lock it. Try not to pull on the string, and close that up. Then I would again make a double overhand. Which would serve to lock that. And then again double overhand, and the main big one, and another one to lock that again. Exactly the same knot whether you're using the string or the electrical wire. And there you are. It looks a bit rough, but it does the job okay. Cut the ends. And there's your knot. It's finished and attached. You'd have to make sure the adjustment is correct for your own feet, and it's not too tight, not too loose. If it's a bit tight at first, actually it doesn't matter, because use will stretch these natural materials a little bit. So if it's just a tiny bit snug at first, it's probably going to be correct later on after a little bit of wear. It's not very pretty. The traditional Japanese clogs, they actually have a little metal cover. See if I can find one. Yeah. Here's a child's Japanese made one, and they use this little metal cover, the same size for all, which goes over and encloses the knot, so the knot isn't getting bashed on the ground when you walk in. It just covers it all up, makes it look neater. But they're not for sale over here in Thailand. I asked in the mail order catalogue, and they want $1 for each set, which is expensive. Not worth it. You just add too much to the price. So that's one finished, and I have to make another and finish the pair. So there we have our finished pair of gaiter. Nice patterns in the wood. Very not difficult for experienced woodworker. Very simple techniques and tools required. You could probably do without machines, just a drill and file and a saw. This is another method I sometimes use to attach the front, just the thin tube made into a loop and pushed through. As you can see, this has the electrical wire used inside and tied into a knot. And I put little strips of wood with glue on the front to save the actual front of the gaiter getting worn down that will make them last a lot longer. Once they wear to a thin wedge, they start to split. Another style you sometimes find are these single tooth gaiter. They're called ippon, which means one, or tengu gaiter. There's a sort of fictional monster, probably a cartoon monster, which wears these things. You sometimes see wearing them on parades when they've got the full kimono. Males usually wear them, I don't see females so much. They're easy to walk in. The balancing when you're standing up isn't so good, but these are traditional from Japan. I put these rubber stops on the front and back because otherwise they're quite an angle resting front or back. When you're putting them on, taking them off, it just relieves that angle. They're nowhere near worn enough to need replacing, but these are replaceable. They don't usually glue them in, or only a tiny spot of glue, so that when they get worn down you can put in a new piece. But with this thicker body and angled design, they're a lot more complex to make. I have made them myself for people who wanted them, but they're just a fun item really. They totter about a bit like being on stilts. These are some old ones I made with longer teeth, a bit heavier because of the extra wood, but still comfortable enough. And these have a thin strap. I prefer the thicker strap, so I combine two of them just to be doubled up, and they're quite comfortable. Another pair of the traditional Japanese ones, the same thick base, but two instead of a single tooth. And again, some quite early ones I made with a thicker. This was before I found a source for the paulownia wood. This was another wood. It's a bit heavier than the paulownia wood. And the teeth I put on originally, I was using the epoxy glue, which is a lot more, it's harder and sometimes can give way because it is so brittle, and this had an extra piece put on to give it more height. And there is yet another variety which again uses the thicker base with the angled, and these have thinner teeth but much taller usually. These are often called rain gaiter. In the old pictures of old Japan, you see many of the gaiter wearing are like this, quite high, and with the narrower teeth. You see a lot of the adults and children wearing these, but they wore them for everyday use. So obviously in the rain they do keep you far above, especially if you've got a nice long kimono on, which you don't want dragging in puddles. You don't have to be undecorous if you're a lady and pull your kimono up so that it's showing off ankles or too much leg, and with these they'll keep you away from the puddles in the ground. Sometimes they say chefs who made sushi also used to wear these, because the sushi maker was working with fish and other bits of things, and when he's preparing the sushi, bits fall down onto the ground. So working on these keeps him away from the muck on the ground where he's working. So that's a few different types. You should give it a go if you're interested.